Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show. This is English Digest. I am Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Today we're going to continue talking about our social issue. This is actually a legal issue, and it's quite complicated. I think Stephanie is probably more qualified to talk about this than I am because your father is a lawyer, and my father was just a merchant. We don't know much about law in my family, but this is all about law, how to interpret the law, and it's all about the case of Dama Dalum, who is a Bunon man, just a regular fella there living down in Taidong County. He went hunting. He bagged a deer and a goat to use it as food for his 92-year-old mother, but he got arrested.
He got caught.
He got caught because he was poaching and using illegal weapons, and he was supposed to go to jail. But later, some lawyers came out and said, hey, there's a different law there because he's the Bunong tribe. There's a basic law that says that what he did was not illegal. It was perfectly within his rights to do so. He should not have to go to jail.
Yeah, so we're going to follow up on that, find out some more details about this particular case, which is really interesting because I think it's going to affect the indigenous tribes here quite a bit in the future. So let's go ahead and get started by reading through our article. The Dalum case has raised concerns about a lack of understanding of, or a complete disregard for, the hunting culture of Taiwan's indigenous people. Dalum hunts because hunting is a way of life handed down from his ancestors. The duty of a hunter is to look after his family, community, traditional territory, and the land in general. Hunters are considered teachers as well. Dalum himself is a respected elder and has taught the young children of his tribe everything they need to know about the mountains and hunting. To indigenous people, hunting is not just about killing animals. It is a rite of passage for young men. One must undergo dangerous ordeals in the forest to become a qualified hunter, and it takes a great deal of courage and a great diversity of skills. In fact, many parents expect prospective sons-in-law to prove their worth by providing game. Hunting is also seen as a form of spiritual communication with ancestors and mountain spirits. Hence, when indigenous people hunt, they hunt with reverence and never take more than what they need from the forest. Dalum's jail sentence reflected how the culture of indigenous people collides with that of Taiwan's predominantly Han people society. In the past 2 decades, about 230 other indigenous hunters have been arrested, tried, and convicted. Their cases were all similar to Dalum's. Criminalizing an esteemed elder who passes down the hunting tradition is an insult to our culture, said a Sadiq hunter. Dalum's case highlighted a contradiction in the laws concerning indigenous hunting rights and possible discrimination against indigenous culture. Dalum said he and his people hoped the constitutional interpretation would allow them to hunt openly without fear of slander and incrimination.
Okay, everybody, let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. We're talking about the case of Dama Dalum. And remember, he had to go to jail because he hunted a deer and a goat in order to have some food for his old mother, but he was arrested for poaching and possession of illegal weapons. He was supposed to go to jail, but later on they appealed to a different law, and maybe he won't have to go to jail because I guess according to the basic law, the indigenous basic law, it's okay for him to hunt animal for self-consumption. Well, let's continue today. It says the Dalum case has raised concerns about a lack of understanding of or a complete disregard disregard for the hunting culture of Taiwan's indigenous people. So it has raised awareness, you could say, raised concerns about the lack of understanding and also about the disregard for the hunting culture of the Aborigines here in Taiwan. If you raise a concern, that means people start to worry about something. And because this case has been in the news, people are kind of thinking about it and wondering, hey, you know, what's going on? Should they be allowed to hunt? No, it's just an excuse for them to go hunt. Or no, it's okay. It's their culture and stuff like that. So this understanding is coming about. And also, they're worried about this disregard for this culture. Disregard just means they don't think about it at all. They don't care.
Well, it says here that Dalum, he hunts because hunting is a way of life handed down from his ancestors. His ancestors, of course, are people in his family who came before him. Your predecessors are also people who came before you, your ancestors. A lot of people like to study their genealogy and find out who their ancestors are or were and where they came from. So it's a way of life that he's used to because people before him that taught him and maybe taught his grandparents, they all hunted. So he's used to it. So the duty of a hunter is to look after his family. If you look after your family, you provide for them, you take care of them. The community. Your community is kind of like the people around you, the people that you hang out with. It doesn't include just your family members. It's your friends and people that you associate with. Traditional territory. Territory is land. Territory just means an area of land that is controlled by a particular group, a person. Maybe I don't have any territory. Do you, Tom?
No, well, property, I guess, is what you're talking about there. But when I see the word territory, I think of the history of the United States as the United States population moved westward. They had these different territories, like the Oklahoma Territory, for example.
Yeah, but
and then later it became a state.
Yeah, but the indigenous people here in Taiwan have their territories. The territory is the land that is kind of under their jurisdiction or control.
Exactly, the area basically where they live and have lived for centuries. And again, they want to look after their family, their community, their territory, and the land in general. Hunters are considered teachers as well. Okay, so hunter isn't just somebody who goes out and shoots an animal and brings it back to provide food. They're also respected as teachers. Dalum himself is a respected elder and has taught the young children of his tribe everything they need to know about the mountains and hunting. When I first heard this name, I thought, okay, this is just some kid going out to go hunting or something.
No.
But it actually turns out that he is an elder. His mother's 92, so he must be up there as well. So he's a respected elder, and he's, yes, indeed, maybe a chief or something like that.
He might be, yeah.
And he, of course, has taught the young children of his tribe everything they need to know about the mountains and hunting. And indeed, if you've lived close to the land, you know there's a lot of stuff to learn there about plants and the behavior of animals and weather conditions. And all that stuff is, requires a lot of experience to understand. So he taught these children of the tribe all they need to know. The word tribe here, I've had some confusion with this because I think a lot of people here in Taiwan mix up the word tribe with village. Okay, a tribe is actually the group of people, the people themselves that are part of some social organization, like the Sioux tribe in the United States or the Potawatomi tribe or whatever. But here you've got the Amis tribe, the Taya tribe, the Bunong. Those are all groups of people or the tribe. And the place where they live is the village.
Ah, okay. Yeah, definitely different. Now, in the third paragraph here, it says to indigenous people, hunting is not just about killing animals. It goes a lot further than that. It is a rite of passage for young men. When you talk about rite of passage, it usually is used when you're talking about kids moving from the time that they're young children to adulthood, rite of passage. And for these particular kids who belong to this tribe, they have to actually do something to prove, I guess, to the rest of the tribal members that they are adults, that they have grown into men. So this is a rite of passage. Hunting is a rite of passage for young men of this particular tribe.
It's kind of reminds me of the phrase coming of age. You often see those movies on TV or whatever in the movie theater of young people basically getting involved in some kind of activity and growing up, and they become adults and they're no longer children. So this is kind of similar, but this is in a tribe here. Learning about hunting and stuff is a rite of passage so that you can no longer be a boy but become now a man. And one must undergo dangerous ordeals in the forest to become a qualified hunter, and it takes a great deal of courage and a great diversity of skills. So yes, indeed, you have to undergo these ordeals. If you undergo something, it just happens to you. You have to experience it, especially if it is probably a difficult or unpleasant situation. Well, I have to undergo surgery next Monday. I'm really nervous about it.
Yeah, we often use it for surgery. That's true. An ordeal is something that's quite difficult that you have to go through. An ordeal is sometimes painful. It's a bad experience, maybe even horrible. The ordeal of trying to battle cancer, that's pretty tough to go through. But, sometimes even growing up is an ordeal. Just making it through high school is an ordeal for a lot of kids who aren't popular and who don't fit in. Well, they have to go through some dangerous ordeals in the forest to become qualified hunters. If you're qualified, it means you've either passed some test or gained some certification or maybe some experience that makes you good in whatever you do, qualified to teach, perhaps. Now, it takes a great deal of courage. You can't be a chicken. You can't be somebody who is afraid of danger to become a qualified hunter. You have to be brave. And you also need a great diversity of skills. Diversity means a large variety of skills.
Indeed, you might think hunting is just a cinch. It's really easy, but instead it involves all sorts of skills, and it's a lot easier said than done, especially because animals, they don't want to be killed. They don't want to be hunted. They're going to run away from you.
That's
so
right.
You got to figure out how to trick them into dying for you, and that's not easy. But we'll continue talking about this in just a couple of seconds. Right now, we're going to take a timeout and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina. 我们延续昨天的课文，来看一下今天的第一个句子提到 The Dalum case has raised concerns about a lack of understanding of or a complete disregard for the hunting culture of Taiwan's indigenous people. 其实 Dalum 的这样子的个案例呢，已经引起了怎么样子的关切。Concerns 当作名词是有担心、担忧以及关切的意思，因为大家对于台湾原住民狩猎文化的缺乏认识 a lack of understanding 以及 a complete disregard for 完全的漠视这样子的狩猎文化。 disregard 在这里当作名词，有不理会以及漠视的意思。举个例子来说，这小孩子的成绩不及格是由于呢持续的漠视他的学习。The boy's failure was due to continued disregard of his studies. 接着来看到第二段第二个句子提到猎人的职责是什么呢？ The duty of a hunter is to look after his family, community, traditional territory, and the land in general. 其实在这个原住民的文化当中，猎人是非常神圣的，因为他的责任呢，就是要照顾他的家庭、部落、传统的领域以及整体的土地。在这里的 look after 就是有照顾的意思。其实对原住民而言呢，狩猎不是只有杀生而已。在第3段的第2个句子提到 It is a rite of passage for young men。 在这里 a rite of passage 指的呢，就是因为人生要进入一个新的阶段所举行的仪式，就可以称之为 a rite of passage。 而后面提到One must undergo dangerous ordeals in the forest to become a qualified hunter, and it takes a great deal of courage and a great diversity of skills. 一个呢，年轻的男子必须要在森林里面经历危险的磨难，而这样子是需要很多的勇气以及多方面的技巧。在这里的 ordeal 当作名词，是有苦难跟折磨，经历了这些才可以成为合格的猎人 a qualified hunter。 而需要的除了勇气之外，还有 a great diversity of skills。 A great diversity of 就是指什么的多样性，所以如果说你有多方面的兴趣，你就可以说 a great diversity of interests。We're
going to take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue talking about the rite of passage for young men, learning how to hunt and stuff. It's very cultural with indigenous groups here in Taiwan, so the basic law is supposed to protect that right, that rite of passage. It's cultural again, as we said, but Dama Dalum was convicted of poaching and illegal weapons possession according to the conservation law, but hey, some lawyers said, hey, we need to interpret this case by using the basic law for indigenous people, which says he basically is entitled to do that. And yes, indeed, we just left off talking about hunting, the rite of passage. You have to have great skills to become a qualified hunter. You're also a teacher in your tribe. In fact, many parents expect prospective sons-in-law to prove their worth by providing game. Okay, so this is a tradition here in these cultures here. Lots of parents expect those sons-in-law to be able to prove themselves as a hunter, okay? We're not going to let you marry our daughter unless you prove yourself as a hunter and if you prove your worth by providing game. Game here usually refers to the animal that you're hunting. Hey, is there any wild game here in this country? I'd like to do some hunting. Game here, of course, also refers to the animals after you have killed them. They want you to provide animals or meat that you got through hunting.
Yeah, game only applies to wild animals. If someone's raising pigs or cattle for beef, that's not game, guys.
There's no hunting in that, is there? Yeah.
No, game has to be wild. Now, hunting is also seen as a form of spiritual communication with ancestors and mountain spirits. Again, this refers back to the tribal peoples' their traditional beliefs and their culture. Communication is the exchange of information or news between people. Could be written, it could be spoken. If they're talking about communication with their ancestors, it might be through prayer, that kind of thing. So hence, or therefore, when indigenous people hunt, they hunt with reverence. You see this word reverence used a lot when you're talking about religion. And it means great or deep respect for something, maybe an idea, maybe your religion, maybe for God. Here it's a deep respect, of course, for their ancestors and mountain spirits.
Yeah, I can imagine it. You're out there hunting and you can say, hey, my father did this 20 years ago. My grandfather did it 40 years ago. Our ancestors did it 100 years ago. I feel a certain connection with my ancestors.
Sure.
And also with the mountain spirits. I guess you have to have had this experience to totally appreciate it. And hopefully the basic law does appreciate that. But moving on now to the next paragraph here, it says, Dalum's jail sentence reflected how the culture of indigenous people collides with that of Taiwan's predominantly Han people society. Okay, so this is his sentence, which is his punishment. He has to go to jail. That reflects this sort of conflict between indigenous culture and the majority people of Taiwan. They collide. Okay, let's talk about collide in just a second here, but we'll talk about reflect here. Usually that means light is thrown back from the surface of something, like light is reflected in a mirror, but this also reflects, the meaning there just means it kind of shows us, it comes back at us and teaches us about this conflict that is going on between local culture and basically culture that came from outside.
Now, if a culture collides with another culture, it means they come into conflict. They disagree, or they aren't in agreement, you could say, too. So if you say something's predominantly some sort of way, it means that's the majority. That's what you usually find. So I guess in Taiwan, the people in Taiwan are predominantly Han, although we have lots of other tribes and cultures for sure.
Yep.
Now, in the past 2 decades, a decade is 10 years, so in the past 20 years, about 230 other indigenous hunters have been arrested, where the police arrest them, tried, which means they went to court, and they were found guilty, which means they were convicted. So if you're convicted, you're actually found guilty of the crime that you were accused of. Wow, that's a lot of hunters that have already been put in jail and served sentences for hunting, which was just something that was part of their culture, which sounds like, wow. I'm glad they're finally looking at this case. So it says here in the next sentence, all these cases were similar to Dalum's. So criminalizing an esteemed elder, someone who holds a senior position in the tribe as an elder, who passes down the hunting tradition, is an insult to our culture. This is a quote taken from a Sadiq hunter. When you criminalize something, you make it against the law. Perhaps somebody's doing something and they thought it was legal, but suddenly it's turned into a criminal offense by making it illegal. So they suddenly made something that they have been doing for decades, maybe even centuries, and said, oh no, now it's against the law.
Yeah, he says it's an insult. This is an elder, or at least a hunter from the Sadiq tribe. I think that's the tribe that lived near Alishan, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, yes, that does seem a reasonable assessment here. If you're an elder and you're passing on this tradition of hunting and you have to end up going to jail, that's not very nice. It's an insult. Imagine the kinds of insults that could happen to our own culture because we kill animals and somebody says you can't do that and you're going to go to jail, etc., etc. But let's move on now to the final paragraph here. It says, Dalum's case highlighted a contradiction in the laws concerning indigenous hunting rights and possible discrimination against indigenous culture. So we've got a contradiction here. That means when things just don't match up, a contradiction. Yesterday you said you went to the supermarket, but then today you said you didn't go to the supermarket, so that's a contradiction. They don't match. Both of them can't be right.
Yeah, it's a combination of statements, ideas, cultures, laws that are opposed to one another. They're in complete disagreement. And it highlighted it, so it kind of brought it to the surface. It raised awareness, you could say, of the contradiction in the laws between the indigenous people's law and the Constitution, or this conservation law that was passed by the legislature just in recent years. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens once the Supreme Court, does this interpretation of the Constitution. So it highlighted the contradiction in the laws concerning indigenous hunting rights and possible discrimination. If you discriminate against a people, you are unfair to them based on their culture, their race, their religion, their gender. All of these things can be discrimination when you're unfair to a particular group of people. So we're talking about possible discrimination against the indigenous culture.
And Dalum went on to say that he hopes his people, or at least the constitutional interpretation, will allow them to hunt openly without fear of slander and incrimination. Slander basically is when somebody says something bad about you. Okay, libel is when it's written down. Slander is when they actually say it. So, yes, he hopes that they can hunt and they won't be criticized for it. People won't call them names. Oh, you bloodthirsty hunter, you're killing all the deer that are endangered. And also, he hopes that they won't be incriminated, which means they'll be accused of a crime, convicted, and sent to jail. Okay, so hopefully this law will be corrected and everything will work out. Everybody will be happy and they will have plenty of food on their plate to eat. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
打猎除了是 a rite of passage 之外呢，在这里还提到 hunting is also seen as a form of spiritual communication with ancestors and mountain spirits. 打猎也被视为呢是与祖先以及山里面神灵的一种精神式的沟通。在这里的 be seen as 或是 be regarded as 都可以解释成为被视为。而呢，再来我们看到 Dalum 的这样子的图形，反映了我们怎么去看待原住民的狩猎文化。在这一段倒数第二段的最后一句提到 criminalizing an esteemed elder who passes down the hunting tradition is an insult to our culture, said a Sadiq hunter. 在这里的 criminalize 指的是使他有罪。如果说呢，我们把这样子非常地位崇高An esteemed elder 一个受到尊重的耆老呢，把说因为他把这样子的打猎文化传递下去，就认定他有罪，那么这是对文化的一种羞辱。我们在这里可以从 who 开始刮号刮到 tradition 来修饰前面的 elder。而如果我们讲到 be an insult to 就解释成为对什么的羞辱。比如说 low wages are an insult to hard-working employees 指的呢就是过低的薪资对于努力工作的员工来说就是一种侮辱，而我们也不应该把他们打猎的传统呢视为是一件犯罪的行为。最后一段的第一句提到Dalum's case highlighted a contradiction in the laws concerning indigenous hunting rights and possible discrimination against indigenous culture. 从他的案例当中就凸显了原住民狩猎权相关法律的矛盾。在这里的 contradiction 指的就是矛盾，而后面还有个字 concerning 则是当作介系词，是关于的意思。这样子他们的相关的狩猎权相关的法律却是互相矛盾，除此之外也凸显出 possible discrimination against indigenous culture，似乎也看出来我们对原住民文化的一些有可能的歧视。在英文里面 discrimination 对什么的歧视，我们要搭配的介系词是 against， 这是一个常考的介系词。那么希望可以借由这样子案例呢来做示现，让他们公开的打猎而无惧于一些犯罪行为的指控。以上就是今天的课文讲解，谢谢收听。
That's all for today. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time for another edition of our program. From all of us here at English Digest, we wish you a good day, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.